Hi, welcome to Cassie's Corner. My name is Cassie and I'm your host, and this is a new Booktube channel, so I have decided to use the Booktube tag, Booktube Newbie channel, so that I can answer these 11 questions and let you guys know a little bit about me so you can get an idea of what my content's going to be like. I will tell you at the end of this video some of the ideas that I have planned for you. And now, right before I start my questions, could you go ahead and give me a like? The reason I'm asking is that I just want to know how many people are not only seeing my little thumbnail, but also clicking on it and start listening to me talk. So that's all I really ask of you right now. I won't ask you to subscribe until the end. So let's go ahead and begin with these 11 questions, all right? So number one is, why did you start this channel? So the reason that I started this channel is that I absolutely love reading. I read a lot. I read intensely. I'm very present with my reading, and I'm also an older reader within the Booktube community, in that I'm in my 40s. And I would like to share some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along my reading career to help younger people and people of my age and older too, to help maximize their experience of reading. So basically how to analyze books, how to look at text, how to be more present with your reading material. And that's going to help you not only retain information more, but it's also going to help you read probably more books because you're going to enjoy it a lot better. And it's also going to help you write better reports. If you're somebody who writes reports, write better reviews if you do book reviews, and just be able to connect more with the content and with the author, and all of that great stuff. So that's why I want to do this channel. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? So the second question, I think the best way I can put it is that from the start, I've already done YouTube channels before. I've had one very successful channel and one just a hobby channel that I still have active right now. And basically, I know what it takes to make a successful YouTube channel. I know I have to put out content routinely, and that I need to be present for it, and the kinds of planning that involves having a YouTube channel. So I already know that that's what I want to do. It's just that I'm switching gears to something that I'm actually passionate about, because I haven't ever had a YouTube channel of something that I'm really, really passionate about. And by that, I mean something that can be my why for every day, right? Because reading is always going to be something that I'm going to be doing anyway. Okay, so question 3, what are you excited about the most when you're thinking about starting this channel? So what I'm excited about the most is the fact that I'm going to be putting all of my energy into reading, and that's it. And that sounds so much fun to me, all right? Like, that seriously sounds a lot of fun. I mean, of course, I'm going to be planning videos and making relative content, making content that's interesting and all of that. So that's, you know, a little bit off to the side there. But for the most part, I'm just going to be focusing on what I'm an expert in already. So that's what I'm excited about. It's just the content that I'm going to be making, because it's about reading. Question number 4, why do you love reading? My love of reading is for all the various reasons why we read, okay? I love knowledge acquisition. I am naturally extremely curious. I want to understand people better. I have always been the kind of person that is very awkward in social situations, so reading books and reading about relationships helps me understand relationships better. It helps me connect to the human condition. It helps me connect to different time periods. It helps me to connect with the rest of the world, really. It answers questions. It teaches me how to do something. It makes me a better person. There are so many reasons to love reading, and all of them are my reasons, and all of them are true. I love reading above everything else, and I mean, it would be hard for me to imagine an experience that could bring me more joy than reading. I mean, it really is. So, I mean, why do I love reading? It's because I love it. So the next question is, what book or series got you into reading? That would be Bambi by Felix Salten. So Bambi by Felix Salten is a book that I'm sure you guys are probably like, oh yeah, Bambi, okay. It's like that Disney movie, right? Well, yeah, it is. No. So Disney didn't really do a very good job translating the text into film. It did an extremely poor job, actually, especially considering how well it did with most of its other source material. Bambi is actually a book that was banned during Nazi Germany. A lot of the books were burned. It's actually somewhat of a miracle that Bambi survived, the book, I mean. And so this book is really special because of that, because of its place in history. And it's also special because of the kind of story it is. So you're in a woodland setting with your main character, which is Bambi, the deer, right? And he's faced with all of these forces all around him, just like we are in our lives, huh? And these forces are things that are like archetypal, like, okay, so there's the concept of winter, you know, that's a force that we have to face, right? And of course with that comes scarcity and coldness and, you know, and that kind of stuff. But then there's other things. There's like forces like love, and there's forces like fire and rain and just the natural elements, you know, and that kind of stuff. And basically we read how this character deals with these forces. Some of them are more enormous forces than others, but most of these things that he's dealing with, he's kind of trying to understand on a little bit higher level than the animals around him. Now, I do have to say the animals are written very well. The animals are done in a very convincing way. You don't really think about them being animals, if that makes sense. But anyway, what I love about the story of Bambi is that Bambi's character is trying to get beyond just what does this mean in the context of this woodland setting. He's trying to transcend his experience and trying to figure out what does this mean in the whole world, in the whole in the whole system of things. And that individual's thinking, that kind of trying to think outside of the immediate and thinking outside of the immediate group of the animals that he's around and that kind of stuff, is probably one of a few reasons why it was banned in Nazi Germany. As we travel through his life, we learn some very surprising ideas that can apply very adequately to our own life in showing us about how we can look at the challenges that face us, what we can do something about versus what we can't, and how to take the things that are bigger than us and put them into a way of thinking that will help us understand the world and get meaning from the world. So I really, really appreciated this story. I read it for the first time when I was in first grade, and it was a completely different story then. I got something out of it, absolutely, but I have been reading this book maybe once every 2 years or so ever since, and it is just such a treasure. It is such a hidden gem, and I would really recommend that anybody go out and read about it, especially if you're a very introspective person, especially if you're looking for things in your life to have more meaning, because he is definitely a very good teacher, and Felix Salten, the author, is an amazing author. He really is. So I would suggest that for you guys. But you know, I mean, you know, if you have time. So, question number 6, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? So, honestly, the questions that I would ask my favorite booktubers would be stuff like, hey, how are you? How are you doing? You know, like, how are you holding up? Maybe I would ask them, like, what books have you been reading most recently? You know, what's a book that really, like, surprised you? That kind of thing. But I would probably be much more interested in them as a person before I was interested in them as a YouTuber or them as maybe a famous type person or somebody that I admire a lot. I would just really want to know how they're doing, just, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's probably what I would ask my favorite YouTubers. Question number 7, what challenge do you think will be the hardest to overcome? Now, I will definitely tell you, like, this is definitely going to be my hardest challenge. And so this is going to be a kind of like a game for us, okay? I'm going to only mention this once. And for the rest of the time that I have this YouTube channel, you can hold me accountable to this challenge, okay? So a challenge that I have right now, and this is just in my personal life, is that I do have a lot of mental health issues, and I have noticed that up until my age now, I've used a lot of those mental health issues as labels for myself. Like, for example, I am a person who has depression. I'm a person with insomnia, that kind of stuff, right? And I promise I take medicine. That's just what works for me. I know everybody has their own thing that works for them, but that's what works for me, medication and therapy. But there's one thing that I've really let define me, and that is that I have autism. And I have noticed that I don't want to be defined by that anymore. I don't want to be defined by a disability. I want to be defined about what I do and who I am, rather than just the way my brain works, right? So I'm only going to say that once, what I have that thing, but I'm not going to be talking about that because that's not the label that I choose for myself. Not that I have any kind of embarrassment about it or anything like that, not at all. I love to be part of that community and all of that. I love to be both a spokesperson for that community and also to help others in that community, but I just don't want to define myself as that anymore. I'm done doing that. So that's my own personal challenge, and so that's going to be my challenge for the channels, and I'm just not going to fall into that place where I'm all like, well, I'm the booktuber that has this. You know, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make my booktube about me and what I have that doesn't have anything to do with that stuff, right? So I suppose that if you want to subscribe, you can see how well I keep that challenge, right? So question number 8, when did you start reading? This is really interesting because I actually remember when I couldn't read. Now I was hyperlexic. For those of you who don't know what hyperlexia is, I'll just say real quickly, it's basically when a person starts reading a lot younger than typical and they read at a higher level than typical. And sometimes it can be both, sometimes it can be one, and sometimes it can be the other, okay? So that's a very simple explanation of hyperlexia. So I had hyperlexia, and I remember being 3 with my a babysitter, basically, and she was reading while she was watching me, and I was watching her, and she was moving her lips when she was reading, and I thought, oh, that's it, that's how you read. Like I couldn't figure out how to make the words make sense, and I thought, oh, if I open the book and I start moving my lips, then I'm gonna be able to understand the words, right? And I was like, I just remember opening the book and moving my lips like so hard, like probably making crazy faces, but I wanted to read so badly, and it was so painful. I remember not being able to have that. It was this lack that I totally felt, and it was such a strange feeling because I remember that yearning, that emptiness that needed to be filled inside of me. And that's a really interesting thing to remember. Now, I think the reason that I remember is because it was so emotional for me, because when I think back on that memory, I don't really have good words to describe what was going through my head. It was just mostly pictures and images and feelings. Language acquisition typically doesn't happen until we're much older as far as how we describe our experiences, but that is an experience that I remember happening. And then I remember at the end of kindergarten when we were told that we had this like really huge test and we had to make sure that we did our best on it and all of this. It was public school, you know, so they gave us a lot of like stress over this. And I remember thinking that it was like really bizarre, because I thought that I was going to be writing all of these things out and everything, and it was like one of those fill in the bubble things. I had never had an experience with that before, so it was like really bizarre to me that I had to fill in the bubbles. And so the teacher had to read us the questions and tell us where the answers were and everything, and it was really weird because I didn't have to read. And at the very end, she held up a picture, and it was a picture of a cat. And she said, in the dotted lines below, and there were 3 dotted lines, write down what this is. And so we basically just had to spell cat. And I was like, I remember thinking like, so that's it? That is all I have to do is like fill in these bubbles and spell cat? Like I thought that it was like such a small thing to do. And so I know that by that point I was reading on some kind of level that was much higher than my peers at the time. Okay, they've caught up with me. So that is my memory of when I started reading. It was sometime between age 3 and when they asked me to spell cat. I learned how to read, and I've been doing it ever since. So number 9, where do you read? This chair that I'm sitting in right now was actually purchased to be my reading chair. But I like to read in all sorts of different places. I have a new couch downstairs that I really love. This is my reading chair. I have a couple of other chairs that I like. There is a swing on our porch that I really like to sit in. And the last time I was there, I was thinking out, I was like, ooh, this would make a good reading place, especially when it's raining, right? So I like even think about like new places to read sometimes. I don't know. I do read in bed, but I want to kind of try to cut that out as much as possible because I know it's not so great for sleep hygiene. But basically I can read anywhere. I personally have never been the kind of person to read at the dinner table because I was just taught that was really, really rude. So I don't do that, but yeah. What kinds of books do you like to read? Really, all of them. I mean, I really, really love books, like all of them. I really do. I can say that right now, generally, I read about 75% fiction, 25% non. In any given year, I might read more or less nonfiction. I do like nonfiction as well, so I wanted to include that. I have little phases where I gravitate towards more books in certain genres than others, but generally I read a pretty well-rounded kind of reading. I mentioned earlier that I'm reading the 1001 books to read before you die, and of course there's 3 different lists, so there's not really 1001 books on it. There's really like, I think maybe 1,200 books, something like that. I have a list. So anyway, so I read a healthy dose of classics, definitely. Contemporary, yeah. I really enjoy fantasy, but I don't, it's probably not the kind of fantasy that you're thinking about, in that, let's just put it this way, like George R. R. Martin, you know, he wrote a very amazing, very in-depth world and everything, but I'm not a big fan of George R. R. Martin. It's just not my style. There were too many characters in it for me to keep up with, and I like deep dives into one character. So like when I talk about fantasy, I'm not talking about George R. R. Martin so much, or Lord of the Rings. I'm thinking more like Juliette Marillier and like Daughter of the Forest and some of those kinds. I really like woodland settings when I'm talking about fantasy. I like historical fiction a lot. I really like some true crime here and there sprinkled. Let's see. I think mostly it's going to be classics, though. Classics are things that are literary acclaimed, that kind of thing. Like, for example, I have the winner of the International Booker Prize that I'm going to be reading probably next month, and stuff like that. So just basically what's not only what is relevant and what is right now, you know, being promoted and stuff like that, because, you know, they can be off sometimes. But I also like to read a good amount of both fiction and non and different kind of genres. The only genre that I really haven't read anything in is Western. I just haven't read a Western. And if maybe I have and I just don't know it, but I don't think that I've ever read a Western. I can say that I prefer not to read intense sex scenes with lots of details. It's just not my style. I'm just not interested in that. I think it's gross, you know. I mean, usually the kinds of sex scenes that I'm talking about that I don't like to read are like, they're so over the top that it like really doesn't advance the story at all. You know, it's just sex for sex scenes, right? I don't really like that personally, but I mean, that's just me. I mean, I don't, yeah. So the last one, what does your book collection look like? So most of it's on my Kindle, and before you get mad at me for not, reading so many hard books, just know I'm in my 40s, so I do like being able to manipulate the text size and the screen brightness and all of that, and turning off the blue screen when I can. I personally have found that it's a lot cheaper because I get a lot of my books through library borrowing programs, and I also like Kindle Unlimited, and Kindle books are generally cheaper than regular books, but I do have some physical books, and I get physical books at least once a month because I'm a member of Book of the Month Club. And I also recently found thriftbooks.com. If you're interested in Book of the Month or thrift books, I've got some affiliate links below. Like the thrift books, I think if you spend $30 and you get a free book, and then the Book of the Month is just basically you get a certain amount off. And Book of the Month Club is really great because they always have like new releases that are really nice and everything. So I do get physical books, but as far as like how do I display my books, I have little bookshelves here and there just sprinkled throughout the house. I don't have a dedicated library. I have 2 teenagers, and I'd rather, if I'm going to put in a dedicated library in the house somewhere, I would rather wait until they've grown up before I do that. But like just looking around, like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know I have a 6th one in there. So I have at least 6 bookshelves like in my view. So I mean, I have spaces in all rooms where I have books laying out. I don't really like to use books as decoration, but sometimes I just lay them out because I know that they're places where somebody might want to pick something up. And like I said before, I have teenagers, so I want to encourage them to read. So sometimes I leave some books around so that they might discover something that they enjoy, So that said, that is the end of the newbie questionnaire. I hope you enjoyed my answers. I wanted to let you know some of the stuff that I want to talk about over the next month or so. I'd like to talk about the difference between a reader and an avid reader, and like defining that and what that actually means, because I think that there are a lot of readers, but then there's like the avid readers, and it's like there's something different about them, and I want to talk about what I think that is and have kind of a discussion about that. So that's going to be one of my videos, like the difference between a reader and avid reader and how to tell which one you are. And then I want to have some videos. I'm not being rude. I'm looking at my tips and tricks and stuff like that because I want to make sure that I tell you everything. So I'm sorry I'm not looking directly at you right now. But yeah, I want to help you maximize your reading experience for retaining information. And I'm not talking about just for tests or something like that. I just mean like when you read a book without doing a whole lot different, how you can remember more about the books that you read, especially for those of us who read like 50 to hundreds of books a year. It can get a little bit confusing for some people, keeping track of all the different books and how they read and all of that. So I think that can be something that would be good. I also want to talk to you guys about how to be more present and more engaged with reading. I will be doing these are the books that I read in August sometime soon. I'm also going to be telling you what books that I expect to read in September. So those are kind of like the more mainstream Booktube books that I'm going to be doing. And I'm also going to do some deep analyses of different books, especially the 1001 books to read before you die. I really want to do something with that so that I can make it easier for other people to get started on that goal, because whether it's that list or if it's a different one or you want to curate your own for yourself, I think having reading goals and then achieving them, and how do you go from point A to point C of it actually achieving the goal, is important as a reader, especially if you're a serious reader. So that said, I hope that sounds somewhat exciting for you. I do want to also let you guys know that I have a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, so I do talk a lot about psychodynamic theory when I'm analyzing books. So you might hear me say things like the shadow, the unconscious, and the semi-conscious and the conscious mind. I might talk about the collective unconscious. I really like to talk about themes and symbolism in books. Basically, your average English teacher, I would say maybe like high school literature teacher, or maybe like a college literature teacher, although I don't consider myself a professor, but if you want to call me that, that'd be great. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the vision I have for the channel, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to meeting you guys. Introduce yourselves in the comments. I'll definitely follow you back if you're also a YouTube channel. And just thank you so much for spending some time with me. I will see you soon in another video. Bye.